Hello and welcome to Parkessent. My name's Jake and today we're going to be discussing velocity at Flamingo Land. Accelerating from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 2.8 seconds, Velocity is Flamingo Land's launched motorbike coaster, which opened at the park in 2005. Velocity was the second of Vekoma's motorbike coasters to be built and to this day remains the only coaster of its kind in the UK. Riders are seated on motorbikes in something like a bike riding position, with a back restraint to ensure that they remain secure. This restraint is lowered by pulling the handlebars towards the rider, which is quite unique and you don't see it on many coasters. Velocity has a top speed of roughly 60 miles per hour. It reaches a height of 57 feet and contains 2,152 feet of track. Now then, the ride commences out of the station and around a 180-degree unbanked turn. Out of this turn, you are loaded into the launch bay. Now, you're held here for quite a few seconds, around 10 seconds or so, whilst the sound effect is played. This sound effect is the revving of a motorbike engine, although it doesn't always work, so sometimes you just sat there in silence, like this. But eventually the launch does hit and you're rocketed at 60 miles per hour roughly through a straight piece of track over a massive airtime hill. You bank down into the first corner. Now this corner is really intense. Into the second corner, which is equally as intense, and then into the third corner, which is, believe it or not, quite intense. You then go over a little sort of jagged airtime hill into a straight airtime hill onto another straight airtime hill and into the brakes, back round into the station. Now, this coaster doesn't last very long. It's about a minute long, but in that time, it packs in quite a few elements, as you saw. The launch is fantastic. The turns are intense. There's some brilliant views of the other coasters at the park, and it's just an all-around great experience. Now, where to start with Velocity? Well, let's start with the theming. The theming there kind of isn't any. As with a couple of the coasters at Flamingo Land, the theming is very barren. The focus is definitely on the ride experience as opposed to the sort of immersion and sort of storyline that a lot of other parks try and focus on. With Velocity, you are literally entering a queue line, going up a cattle pen, getting on the coaster, and getting off again. There's no sort of build up, there's no real immersion. There are now some banging tunes playing in the station. They were introduced a few years ago, the sort of hard rock 70s, 80s kind of that sort of music. They blast all day in the station. Good songs get you in the mood for riding a motorbike, I guess. So yeah, the theming is a little bit barren, but it's certainly made up for with the ride experience. Now, the highlight of the ride is, of course, the launch. Now, this is the case with a lot of Vekoma launch coasters. The launch is fantastic. It's really forceful. It is a hydraulic launch, so it's not a gradual ascent into the launch, so like Icon at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. No, this is an immediate launch, and you're really pushed back into your seat. It's fantastic. And going from the launch into the first airtime hill provides some brilliant forces. The best force of the entire ride, one of my favourite moments, is after that massive airtime hill when you're banking round into the side. That is extremely intense and you're really pushed down into your seat. It's a fantastic element. As for the operations on Velocity, they've always been pretty solid. It only ever ran one train, but it seats 16 riders, and with the nature of the ride being quite a fast and short experience, it only lasts about a minute. You can easily get maybe 40 trains out in an hour. If you work that out, it's about 500 riders an hour, which is pretty good for Flamingo Land standards. Unfortunately, Velocity has been facing quite a lot of downtime in the last few seasons. I know it was closed for the first couple of months of this past season, and that has been the case in many seasons before. However, it is open most days in the main season. I must admit the operations on Velocity are pretty what's the word? Consistent. They're pretty consistent. Let's go with that. Now I want to talk about the comfort. Um, it's quite unnatural Velocity. The way you sit in the car, you sort of kind of have to put your arms forward and you sort of leaning forward a little bit. Now it's quite uncomfortable on the sort of forceful bits because, as I said before, you really get pushed down into that seat and there's not much padding, unfortunately. It can be exceptionally rough on your arms, especially. You got to think if your arms are pulling forward all the time. especially with the forces that you get. It can be quite uncomfortable, but that doesn't take away from the experience, in my opinion. For a lot of people, it would. Not me. Nevertheless, it is a good ride. It's definitely worth doing if you're at the park. I wouldn't queue more than maybe half an hour for it. The queues can easily reach that on sort of a busier day. The biggest queue I've ever seen for it has been upwards of an hour and a half. At that point, they shut off the ride sometimes just because of capacity and getting people around. So they have been known to shut the ride due to the queue length. And it's not the best ride at Flamingo Land, but it does its job. It's a brilliant supporting ride. What are your thoughts on Velocity? Let me know down in the comment section below. Do you think it's the best coaster in the world? I hope you don't think it's the best coaster in the world. Now then, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and I'll see you next time. Bye.